Welcome back, fight fans. We've got a huge one today. We're talking about last week's events. That's UFC Vegas 53, BFL 72, and The Ultimate Fighter Season 30, Episode 1. So we've got all that. And then we're going to probably take a break. And then we've got UFC 274. That's not one, not two, but 4 different events we're going to be talking about. How crazy is that? It's going to be a long one today. I think we're probably going to make that 2-hour mark fairly easily. Hopefully not too much longer than that, though, because I want to have some dinner. So we'll get started right away, of course. UFC Vegas 53, that's where we're going to start off, of course. We're going to start off with the first prelim, as always, and work our way through. So we opened up with the ladies. We had Shauna Young, Gina Mazzani, and we saw our first finish of the night. We had a late cancellation. That was actually going to be 2 pretty good, promising prospects, actually. I think it was maybe the flyweights or something. I don't remember. But it was 2 good-looking guys, and sadly that fell through. So this was the opening one of the night. Mazzani came in looking pretty good. She was winning the early clinch battles, pushed the pace on the feet, managed to stumble Young once with a big knee. She kept that momentum going into the second round, but that's when Young started to figure things out. She picked Gina apart on the feet. And then because she knew that Young was kind of starting to run away with it a little bit, Mazzani tried to move the fight to the ground. Sadly, that's where it all went wrong for her. She was reversed, landed with Young on top of her, and from there, from there, Shauna really took full advantage of the position, letting loose some ground and pound, and she got her first UFC win. So great showing for Shauna Young. TKO in the second round. Next up, we had Natan Levy and Mike Breeden. Breeden, you could kind of tell what he was trying to do early anyway. He took Levy down, tried to shut down his offense, but Levy managed to get up pretty quickly from that. Actually briefly brought the fight back down to the ground, though, fighting for a nasty heel hook. Oh my God. Whenever I see a heel hook or a toe hold or any of those ankle picks, anything like that, it makes me cringe a little bit. It's crazy. After that, though, after he threw another blistering head kick, I mean, these kicks coming from Levy were insane. Levy did the same thing again, latching onto another heel hook. He did that quite a few times throughout the fight. The round was pretty close, but with those flashy moves and the late control time, because really, it sounds silly, but when you're flashy, the judges do notice that. Not that that's a criteria at all, but they notice, oh, this person seems to be doing more, even though they might not be. It's just all flash. But you know what? It makes a difference on the card. So I was thinking Levy probably won the first round like that. Knowing he had the grappling advantage after the first round, though, Levy avoided Breeden's strikes and threw him down to the ground, really. Where where are we here? Both of them kind of started to get a little bit tired. Seemed as though Breeden was actually starting to regain his momentum. That all ended, though, as Levy landed another big one, stunned Breeden, and then used his wrestling to smother him again, likely taking another round on the cards. I kind of thought it was probably 2-0 at that point. Breeden came in just as heavy in the final round, though. I mean, he's either tied or 2 rounds down. You got to do something. Threw everything at Levy, tried to get that finish, but he couldn't really get anything going. Breeden was pretty relentless. Oh, wait, what? Throwing everything at Levy, tried to get a finish. Levy couldn't get really anything going. I need to read my notes more carefully. Levy couldn't really get too much going. Breeden was relentless, throwing the huge body shots, knees, combos, trying to get him out of there, trying to do everything. He was doing everything he could. But then it was Levy that came back into it. Had the biggest moment of the round, landed one, dropped Breeden to his knees with a huge shot. I mean, it was an all-out war. And really, this was actually my fight of the night up until the last one, of course. This was my fight of the night up until then. It was an amazing, amazing fight. Seriously, so good, so good. You love to see so many fights like this. But yeah, so it was so close, but it seemed like Levy won either 29-28, maybe 30-27 on the cards. The judges agreed, well, exactly like what I said. 2 of them had it 29-28. One of them had it 30-27 for Levy, and that is actually his first UFC win. I mentioned this before, but he actually made his debut earlier this year because he was on the Contender Series. I think it was back in 2020, and he still hadn't gotten that first win, but now he's got one, and that was an amazing fight. After that, we saw Gabe Green, Johan Lainesse, and we saw another finish in this one. The fight started with a pure striking battle. You'll love to see that. You'll love to see some striking. The one pretty obvious difference, though, was Lainesse's power. He landed the much bigger strikes. Near the end of the first, my dog is making stupid noises and being an idiot. We'll carry on. Lainesse brought the fight to the ground, solidifying that round on the cards, I would say. I think it was definitely a clear 1-0 lead after that. Started off pretty even again in the second, but took a brutal turn. Brutal after Green dropped to the ground after a massive, massive hook. He kept that momentum going through the rest of the round, using his wrestling to shut down Green's offense. But after he got up, though, Green started to finally let it all go. He started to let loose some crazy combos, combo after combo, to the body, to the head, melted Lainesse along the fence until the ref came in to stop it. Huge come from behind victory for Green. I ended up actually giving him the most valuable fighter of the night because apparently a year ago, he could barely see. And then he had an eye surgery. So, I mean, you know, all of that together, then to come back and come from behind win. And he was I think he was the underdog in this, I'm sure. So all of that put together, most valuable fighter of the night for me, for Gabe Green. Francisco Figueiredo, Daniel Da Silva in fight number 4. Knowing that the power and skill coming back at them on both sides, they were both pretty slow to start because you're talking about some pretty good flyweights here. The action ended as soon as it started, with Da Silva throwing Francisco to the ground. From there, though, Figueiredo slipped down, grabbed his knee, and just started twisting it, putting everything into it. A little over a minute in, and Figueiredo had already grabbed the win with a devastating, devastating knee bar. I mean, oh my God, was that nasty. So, of course, that was the submission of the night. I mean, you can't do much better than that, seriously, except for maybe Andrade, because I gave her the submission of the month. But a knee bar like that is pretty good. That's pretty good too. Then we had the next prelim. It was the only prelim pick of the week for me, and it was one that we were supposed to see last week. It was Alexandr Romanov. Actually, we were really supposed to see this a few weeks ago. It's been moved around a lot. Alexandr Romanov, Chase Sherman. Originally, like I said, it was supposed to be Tanner Boser. Sadly, Boser pulled out, so we ended up with Chase Sherman. And I mean, I made it pretty clear that I think, Romanov was the obvious choice going into this. Excuse the squeaking in the background. My dog's being a lunatic. And also going into this, not only did I think it was a pretty clear win, but everybody else did too. And I mean, the odds showed that he was actually the biggest betting favorite in UFC history at minus 2,200. Minus 2,200 going into this. So, and that is exactly why I said, don't put this in any parlays. You're not making any money off of it. I mean, you're just not making any money off of it. And just on the off chance, the minuscule, tiny chance that he does lose, then you'd be making some money. But I mean, it's just so crazy to think that he would have lost that there's just no point. And yeah, you would just lose your parlays if he would have lost. There's just no point. It wasn't worth the risk. Let's say that. Oh, I was pressing the wrong thing. When you've got a computer and a laptop, then you grab the mouse thinking you're controlling the wrong thing. Happens to me all the time here. Anyway, so I had Romanov by finish and less than a minute into the fight, and it was pretty obvious why Romanov was the huge favorite. I mean, he threw Sherman over his head. We're talking about somebody who weighs 250 pounds, threw him over his head like it was nothing, slammed him into the canvas. He managed to get up briefly, but Romanov dragged him back down, and he just kept doing that, pushed him along the fence, started to let loose his famous King Kong ground and pound. And from there, that was it. I mean, he grabbed Sherman's arm, twisted it back, got a quick, nasty Americana submission in the very first round, which you also don't normally see very often. So it was actually, I mean, really the last 2 weeks actually have been pretty cool for submissions. You got the Americana, the knee bar, and of course the standing arm triangle from Andrade last week. My goodness, crazy stuff. So that was Romanov proving everybody right with the odds at minus 2,200 submission in the very first round. After that, I don't know, given his 5-0 UFC start, by the way, after this win, I mean, it's pretty obvious he should be getting a top 15 contender. He mentioned Sakai in his post-fight interview. I think that's a great idea. I really do. Sakai's near the bottom. Hasn't been doing anything too crazy recently. Hasn't even fought in a while. So I think that's a great call out by him. But another one that we haven't seen in a while, I was saying Walt Harris. Why not? Why not see Walt Harris? We haven't seen him in a long time. He's good. We might, I think it would be interesting. That could work too. But with talent like this, I mean, I'm not even kidding. I really do think that even somebody in the top 10 like Tybura, Dawkins, Pavlovich. We don't know if Dawkins is going to keep fighting at heavyweight. I don't think he should, but we'll see. We'll see. But with him still in the heavyweight division, any of those three would make a lot of sense because they're not doing anything crazy. So, I mean, you're not talking about, Volkov. You're not talking about Rosenstrike, anybody like that. But somebody, where it's like, okay, you're testing Romanov, but not throwing him into the deep end, something like that. That's what I'm thinking for him. But whoever it is, I know we're all going to watch it. I mean, he is really one of the people that's going to be the future of the heavyweight division. You've got Aspinall, you've got Gon, you've got maybe Tuivasa doing some big things. And now you've got Romanov. All of those, that's the future of the heavyweight division right there. After that, we had the main card, Gerald Meerschaert, Krzysztof Jotko. I had Jotko by decision going into this, but I did say how ridiculously close this really was going to be. I was so sure this was going to be so close because, I'm not a huge Meerschaert fan, but he has proven, especially in his last few fights, that he can definitely prove everybody wrong, and he can also put up quite a fight. So I knew this was going to be close, and Jotko hasn't done anything too crazy either recently, so I knew they were very well matched. But I had Jotko on there because what else did I have here? Could have got either way. Recent performances. Oh, and because he's got a lot of decisions. Because when GM3 loses, he tends to get finished, or he finishes his opponent. That's really, there isn't usually much in between. Whereas Jotko usually goes to decisions. That to me means he's durable, but it also means that he can last the entire fight and still do well in the later rounds, which I thought Gerald was going to have a hard time with. So that is why I had Jotko by decision. And that is exactly what we saw. I mean, Jotko took the momentum early with his striking, bouncing around the cage, landing combos and kicks, overwhelmed Meerschaert on the feet, really, in the first round. So clearly won that one. Jotko found himself stuck along the fence at the start of the second, though. He got away from the fence to hit Gerald with a couple more combos, but GM3 kept that wrestling going, pushed him along the fence, threatened some takedowns in there. It was looking good for him, but then he got reversed near the end of the second round. Jotko found himself on top, and really because of that, he might have actually stolen that second round. I wasn't sure. It could have gone either way, considering what was happening. But with that image in the judges' minds, you never know. You could have easily seen a 2-0 lead going into the third there. That's for sure. Jotko kept that strategy going into the final round. He took Meerschaert down again, grabbed some control time, put himself up ahead. Also shutting down anything Gerald had, of course. The rest of the round was just some more control time, split up with some crisp combos on the feet. So, it was close, but Jotko was just slightly too much for Gerald there, and he took the decision win just like we thought. Next up, we had Darren the Damage Elkins, Tristan Connolly. I had Elkins going into this, and it all came down to experience for me. Plus, he's been more active, and he had the slight 3-inch reach advantage. But I did say how close this was going to be. But I did give, of course, that slight edge to Elkins because of that. Elkins showed his experience pretty early on, threw together some combos, dragged Connolly to the ground. Connolly managed to get up for a bit here and there, but Elkins just dragged him down, smothered him down there for almost the whole first round. So easy first round win for Elkins there. In the second, Connolly started to open up his striking a little more, which was good for him. Landed some pretty brutal leg kicks, nice combos, but Elkins grabbed that momentum back, took the fight to the ground again. So, it's kind of tough to say what happened with that round. It could have gone either way because Connolly did look great in the first half of that round with all the striking, the kicks and all that. But you never know. Again, it's kind of like the last one where Jotko was doing that too. Elkins might have stolen that round. Might have been 2-0, up by 2 there. Where are we here? It was too close to call. Maybe Elkins was starting to get tired. Maybe Connolly was starting to feel himself, but actually the opening of the third round was huge for him. It really was. He started to piece Elkins up with some elbows and some knees, made him bleed and stumble all over the place. As the fight was nearing its end, though, Elkins used his experience with wrestling, dragged Connolly to the ground again, and he kept him there for the rest of the fight, busted apart his face with some ground and pound. It actually even looked like maybe Elkins was going to get a late submission win, but they made it to that final bell. And just as we thought, I'd have scored it 29-28 personally. But the judges agreed I mean, but the judges, well, they did agree with the outcome, but they gave it all 30-27 to Elkins there. So yeah, another win for Elkins, looking great. Next up, Jared Gordon, Grant Dawson. I had Dawson by finish on this one. I wouldn't really say that this was a huge mismatch, but it definitely seemed to favor Dawson a decent amount here. The difference to me was their recent history. Gordon had won 3 in a row since his loss to Oliveira, but they were all decisions. As for Dawson, he hadn't lost yet in the UFC, and he grabbed 3 finishes. So to me, there was a clear like power and skill difference for Dawson. So I thought it was going to be close, but I thought Dawson was going to win for sure. I mean, also slightly younger, 4-inch reach advantage. And yeah, all that possible extra power and skill. Started off with some pretty explosive offense from both sides. Gordon led fairly early with some pretty good combos and some clinch work. But Dawson actually might have stolen that round with some pretty dominant wrestling going on. He kept that going into the second, took Gordon's back, stayed there for almost the entire round, tried to get back up, but really just couldn't get anything going at all. Finding himself 2 rounds down on the cards, a pretty clear 2-0 win for Dawson there. Gordon tried everything to try and finish Dawson. That's what you got to do. You know, at that point, it's you got to get the finish or you get finished trying. And that's exactly what Gordon was doing there. He was swinging some huge combos, threw out some submission attempts, but it was that recklessness that led to the late finish. Gordon threw everything into a guillotine, but it didn't work out. Dawson just waited it out, took his back, and grabbed the win with a minute left with a submission there. So another finish, another submission. Crazy the amount of submissions we're seeing. Excuse me. And we're about to, oh, actually, no. I was going to say we're about to see another one, but no, this was actually a TKO. So we saw Andre Fili, Joanderson Brito in this one. By the way, Fili was actually the second biggest favorite of the night. I had Fili by decision in this one. I did think it was going to be kind of close. But yeah, I really thought Fili was going to win here. Just like a lot of other people, I thought Fili was going to win because Brito lost his debut against somebody, well, Algio, who I don't really think is quite as good as Fili. I'm not really sure. I mean, now it's debatable. But also, we know that Fili is so tough. He's incredible in the later rounds. So I figured he would use that toughness in the first round. And then in the second and third, he'd go ahead on the cards. But we never got that far. We never got that far. The fight was over literally as soon as it started. Brito was explosive, which we knew was going to happen. He's always been explosive. He was explosive in the Contender Series and in his last fight. And that's what the problem was, is he used all his energy in the first round and couldn't get anything going in the second and third because he was too tired. And that's probably exactly what would have happened in this one too, which is why I was going towards Fili, but it didn't matter. He let himself go in the first round, and that's all he needed. He got some leg kicks, some huge shots, and then he landed a bomb, dropped Fili, and that was it. Finished him with some ground and pound. Really, the ref had no choice but to stop it. I mean, could he have kept going? Probably. I mean, he probably still would have actually made it to the end of the round, and he might have actually still won the fight in a decision later. But, you know, it's tough. It's tough to see because, Fili is super tough and probably could have made it through. But as a ref, you see that and you kind of have to stop it. So I'm not saying it was an early stoppage at all. It made sense. And he very much deserved the win. In fact, I actually ended up giving him the Rookie of the Month because of that, because nobody else really in the month has done anything as impressive as what we just saw, which is he came back from losing his debut in January or February. I can't remember which one. Came back in, got the win over somebody who was actually, I think, tougher than his last opponent. Finished Fili in the very first round like that. I mean, that's so impressive to come back and do that. And even if that wasn't even a comeback fight, that was still pretty impressive. So I gave him the Rookie of the Month there. The co-main event, Jake Collier, Andrei Arlovski. I had Arlovski by decision going into this because just like the other fights that he's had recently, I figured he was going to use his experience, use his grappling, his clinching along the fence, shut down Collier's offense. And even though I knew it was going to be fairly close, I figured Arlovski would come up ahead thanks to that. Little did I know it was going to be way closer than that. Collier opened up the fight using his size to his advantage. He came in at the limit of, well, I think it was close to the limit at least, of around 265. So whereas Arlovski always comes in 245-ish, to somewhere around there. So he used that extra size to an advantage, pinned Arlovski against the fence. In between his moments along the fence, Collier was hitting Andrei with some pretty big shots, busted him open. The second round was still close, with Andrei landing some decent shots here and there, but Collier likely took that round with his power and control time along the fence. I really did. I thought it was already 2 rounds up for Collier. I really did. So at that point, I was like, well, throw out the the betting slips because we lost this one already. The second round, not the second round, Arlovski came in heavier for the final round, tried to get a finish, but it seemed like it was too late to come back on the cards. It really did. It was a tight fight, but I thought it was pretty clear that Collier won the decision. I was giving it 29-28 for Collier, but I could have even seen possibly a 30-27 for Collier. It just didn't really seem all that close. So I was like, oh no, we lost another one. After getting, by the way, I got every single fight right all the way up until Feely. That's all the prelims, all the way up to Feely, and I lost that one. And then I thought, oh my God, we lost this one too. But out of nowhere, unbelievably, I don't even know what the judges were watching on this one. One of them did score at 30-27 for Collier. I could see that. I could definitely see 30-27 for Collier. But 2 of them saw it 29-28 for Arlovski. I have no idea where they got that from. So we saw Arlovski get the win by split decision. I mean, we got some money off of it. We got our parlays going a little bit more, got a little bit of money back. But I mean, as a fight fan, that's disgusting because he definitely should not have won that. And I actually even ended up giving it the worst judges card of the month for both of them, the pair of them this time. And of course, it was Sal D'Amato just blowing it all over again. Where's my thing? Sal D'Amato, this one's for you. You blew it. Yeah. I mean, every single time he's on, I'm like, oh no, not Sal, not big old Sal. After that, we had the main event of the evening, Rob Font, Chito Vera. I had Font by decision going into this, but I said how razor thin this was going to be. I knew how close it was going to be going into this. I mean, he showed his toughness against Aldo in his last fight. Plus, I mean, he's looked pretty good in general in all of his fights. So I figured, thanks to all that striking, I think Vera's probably going to have a fairly hard time with this, but that it was going to be close still. And I figured Chito was probably going to come in, use the jiu-jitsu a little bit to probably win 1 or 2 of the rounds. I figured that's how close it was going to be. So as expected, though, this one started as a brawl right away, getting their offense going on the feet right away. Thanks to the boxing experience, though, Font clearly was leading after the first round. with the extra crispy combos and the extra activity. Vera, Chito, well, I don't really like saying Vera for some reason. Chito, I'm going to say Chito. Chito woke up in the second round, threw a barrage of kicks. I mean, these kicks were crazy. Some extra combos, but Font honestly was still picking him apart on the feet with some amazing combos. I mean, he's so good on the feet. He really is. And really, it looked as though Font was just going to run away with that round too, when Chito cracked him with a huge shot, dropped him to the ground, and Font seemed to push. Well, actually, that's in between rounds. At that point, I was like, well, the judges could see that one of two ways. Personally, I still thought it was 2-0 for Font because, you know, it was so late in the round that you can't comfortably say that Chito won that round because he didn't win the whole round. He won the last 10 seconds of it. So personally, I still had it 2-0. I had it up 2 for Font here, but you know, do I understand where the judges are coming from? Yeah, you know, and some of the people online too, but still, I don't know. Still, I was thinking it was 2-0 at that point. Font seemed to push that out of his mind in between the rounds, coming in fresh, going back to his striking, picking Chito apart. Then for the second round in a row, right at the end of the round, Chito dropped Font to the ground after a bomb. And again, what do you do with that? Because it seemed still pretty clear that Font was winning the rest of the round, but he got dropped this time, I think, with about 30 seconds left. So what do you do with that? This time, I would say that it was early enough in the round that and Chito did slightly more in the third round. So I was thinking Chito probably edged it thanks to that knockdown. So I was saying 2-1 at this point. That's what I saw. But really, again, you could go either way. You go with the rest of the round, which was probably Font. So you could have been 3-0. Or if you just look at the knockdowns, then you're talking about 1-2 or 2-1 for Chito at that point. Where are we here? The fourth round, almost exactly another copy of it, really. Did some amazing work on the feet again, Font did. And then with a couple of minutes left, Chito got a wild, I mean, just an insane head kick in there to drop him again. And it's like this time, though, I would say that was a fairly clear round for Chito because the knockdown happened fairly early into the round. And then, you know, it's hard to recover after that. So personally, I had it 2-2 there. I had it 2-2. But, you know, again, it could have really gone either way. At this point, like I said, it really could have gone either way at this point. Because at this point, actually, Font was already really close to getting a bantamweight record for significant strikes. That's what people like kind of forget when they were looking at maybe the knockdowns, I guess, right? Because, you know, yes, Chito was getting a couple knockdowns in there, which is very significant, of course. But when you're talking about somebody getting a striking record, clearly they're doing enough offense to maybe win ahead on the cards. And that's why I just don't understand. I don't know. I don't really understand where everybody was getting, where some people were kind of getting the fact that Vera was running away with the fight. And even that he said he was running away with the fight. And it's like, but he landed over 200 strikes on you. And he actually did end up getting the bantamweight record. So, you know, he gets a bantamweight record, but he ends up losing on the cards. Like, I don't know. I'm not sure. But yeah, the final round opened up with Font leading the offense yet again. Used his boxing to actually, he did end up breaking the bantamweight record, I'm pretty sure. But then just like rounds 2 through 4, Vera landed a pretty big one, stumbled Font backwards along the fence. And yeah, I didn't really know how to judge this fight, honestly. Like, it really could have been 48-47 Font. And if you go straight for the numbers, it could have even been more for that. But then, of course, if you go with the knockdowns, then you're probably looking at Chito. I don't know. Like, it's just judge's choice on this one. Like, well, it's a judge's decision on this one. The judges could have gone at either way with this. It's really a matter of quantity over, I guess, quality in this case. I mean, normally quantity does get you the win, but in this case, the judges went with quality. They all gave it to Chito on that one. I don't know. I just don't know. Because, like, when you look at them, yes. I mean, like, when you look at them, there was a pretty clear winner. I mean, Chito barely looked like he had fought. Font was just absolutely mangled. But again, you got to remember, though, that Font did have way more strikes, and he did end up, I'm pretty sure, getting that bantamweight record for significant strikes. So what do you do with that? I just don't know. There's no real answer. I mean, it's all up to personal opinion at that point, I guess. Yeah, I don't know. But what's next, though? What's next for the division? I mean, we've talked about this a lot. We even talked about this, of course, after the title fight with Aljo and Jan. So the champ seems to want to fight TJ, but could be going against Jan in another rematch, maybe even Aldo, actually. And I think that would be even more. I think that would be great. But for Vera, that could mean a fight against one of those guys, but it also could mean a matchup against Sanhagen, I would say. Fresh off that title loss to Jan, or maybe because, Sanhagen hasn't fought since, well, actually, it's been fairly recent, but still, he hasn't fought since then. I think that would be a good one. Or maybe Merab, who hasn't fought in a while, but he is on the 7-fight win streak. Yeah, and then making his way up to a title shot as well, I would say, because everybody wants to see Merab fight again. I would love to see Merab fight again. I think that would be a pretty good one too. Also, by the way, Merab trains with Aljo, and they're pretty good friends. So, I think he's a little while away from getting the title shot. And also, if he's friends with the champ, obviously you're going to go for the title shot anyway, but it is a little bit different when you're training with the champ and you're friends with him too. So, so getting another fight in the meantime, a couple more fights before a title shot. And of course, you still got TJ anyway, and Aldo in the way. So yeah, somebody like that, somebody like Merab or Sanhagen would be great. But I mean, anybody in the top 15 of this division, I mean, you're going to see highlight reel action no matter who's fighting who. I've said that over and over, and every time it's happened, we've seen highlight reel action. So that's just going to continue for the foreseeable future because this division is insane. After losing his last two, though, Font, I mean, he's probably going to be matched up with somebody rising up the rankings. Personally, I'd really like to see Song Yadong. I've seen a lot of people say that. I've also seen, of course, a lot of people say Sugar Sean or Ricky Simone. Well, nobody said Ricky Simone, but I'm saying Ricky Simone because why not? We haven't seen him in a long time. And he's really good too. So somebody like that would make sense. We found out Sugar is probably fighting Pedro Munoz. So we're probably not seeing the Chito rematch yet. But I could very much, I mean, like, it would make a lot of sense that if Sugar beats Pedro, then we could easily end up seeing a Chito rematch at that point because everybody wants to see it, but Sugar kind of has to earn it first because he hasn't, he's not beating anybody in the top 10 yet. Whereas Chito, even though I don't like him, he is doing much better. So, Sugar kind of has to earn his way back into that rematch. But like I said, any matchup in that division is fireworks, really. So yeah, I already mentioned all the bonuses. We had Brito. Oh, Brito got the KO of the night. It was also, I think, the only KO. The submission, of course, Francisco Figueiredo with the knee bar. And then, of course, the fight of the night, Font and Chito. Most valuable fighter, I mentioned it was Green because, of course, he was almost blind basically a year ago. So to come back from that, do all the rehab, the operation and all that, to come back there and win, and also get smoked in the first round like that and come back and win. I had Gabe Green, but I also gave a most valuable fighter bonus to Romanov because, yes, of course, he was the minus 2,200 favorite, the biggest betting favorite in UFC history. Yes, of course he was. But he proved that he's actually worthy of having that distinction by absolutely destroying Sherman here. By the way, Sherman isn't even really that bad. So the fact that he did something like that with an Americana submission, which is not all that common, in the very first round, I mean, that's crazy. You know, that's obviously most valuable fighter behavior right there. And there's no doubt in my mind that this guy's making the top 15 soon. I mean, he's so good. So that was it for UFC Vegas 40. No, not 43. That was a long time ago. UFC Vegas 53. Now we're going to have a quick update about the BFL Battlefield Fight League 72 BFL Mania. I had a great time watching this. I really did. We had 3 title fights. My God, was the action good. I mean, like, it's crazy because every time I think, every time I watch it, I'm thinking, oh, it's not the UFC. It's nothing big up there. But then I turn it on and it's so good every single time. I seriously cannot say enough. You've got to watch this. It's on Fight Pass. It's on UFC Fight Pass. Watch the BFL. Watch Unified MMA, which, by the way, Unified is on this week, and it's also on later in the month. You got to watch these. I mean, also, especially if you're Canadian. If you're Canadian, you want to see that up-and-coming Canadian talent. The BFL and Unified are so good. Seriously, you got to watch them. I mean, and especially BFL Mania, very much worthy of that name. So we'll start talking about that, the 3 title fights, of course. But we'll open up with the first one on the main card. That opened up with Ogujan Yalcin beating Wesley Bowman by decision. Based on the intros alone, seemed like Yalcin was going to completely dominate this fight. I mean, they were going crazy with him in the intros. Plus, I had actually seen him fight. I don't remember if it was the last BFL or the one before that, but I do remember seeing his name before and being impressed even then. Right away, he got Bowman to the ground, started to smother him with the wrestling. Couldn't get a finish at first, but he spent every second of the round on top, moved forward, moving towards submissions, using his ground and pound. I mean, honestly, it was a 10-8 round for me, really. Started the second round the same way, just completely dominated that too. And honestly, I scored it another 10-8. I was, to me, 2016 at this point. I mean, it was so dominant by Yalcin. And then, of course, the third round kept going again, kept doing it again. It took 5 seconds. I don't even know if it was 5 seconds. Could have been less to get the fight to the ground in the third round again. Couldn't get the finish, sadly, in the fight. But I mean, my God, was that dominant. And not to mention, by the way, he's only sitting at 2-0 now. That was his second pro fight, I should say, and absolutely destroyed Bowman. I mean, seriously, we're talking about 30-24 or 30-25, and the judges agreed, by the way. They all saw it 30-25 or 30-24. So, I mean, it's just amazing by Yalcin there. After that, we had Alana Cook and Maria Demers. This, to me, was actually my favorite fight of the night, except for possibly one of the title fights later, which we will talk about. But my God, by the way, interesting fact, this is the first women's fight I've ever seen outside the UFC. So I didn't really know what to expect personally, because you never know with that kind of thing, especially when you're talking about 2 people that were sitting at, well, this is both of their second fights. So I was thinking, well, is this actually going to be good? Like, how good is this going to be here? But my God, was I impressed. Seriously. I mean, both of them were so good in there. For the first couple minutes of the fight, it was dead even, a clinch battle along the fence, but everything changed after a beautiful takedown from Cook. She was looking good on top until Demers flipped the script, almost grabbed an incredible armbar finish. I mean, Demers on the ground, amazing. Amazingly, though, Cook managed to get out of it until Demers started to grab the ankle. My God, I told you, I always cringe when they get the ankle. My God, that was close. And it was an insane round. The whole round, so good. But I'd say that Cook probably got the first round thanks to her control time and a little bit of extra strikes thrown in there. The second round, Demers tried to steal the momentum early, got the control time along the fence. Sadly, Cook managed to sweep her to the ground, grab some much-needed control time there. After getting up, though, Demers used the rest of the round to get some of the striking going. So I would have said 1-1 at that point. I mean, it was so close, and I mean, really entertaining to watch. I mean, I can't say enough how good these fights were. The final round with some fireworks from Demers. I mean, blitzing her with some combos looked absolutely amazing. And Demers used the rest of the round to get some of her striking going. That was the second round. My goodness, what am I doing? Stumbled her along the fence, though. Cook managed to rally back from the fence, took Demers down to the ground, shut down that blitz there. Not great. From there, it was all Cook. Yeah, it was too bad. I mean, you want to see some action. We were just getting some more crazy action, and then Cook shut it down. But good for her. Let loose some big ground and pound. Yeah, it was very close the first two rounds. So I would have said 1-1 going into the third. And then, of course, Cook won that one with the final round, I would say. And that's exactly what the judges saw, too. They had it 29-28 for Alana Cook. So close. I mean, and you know what? I mean, Cook, I believe, is 2-0 now. Or maybe 1-1. I'm not really sure. I know it was both of their second fights. I mean, she looks amazing. I could easily see her being in the UFC. I mean, even within the next couple of years, she's that good. And Demers, I mean, she did so good keeping up with Cook, too. I mean, you know, we're talking about Cook getting a decent win here. But, I mean, Demers had so many chances, too, to get the win, too. I mean, she looked so good. And it sucks that she's at 0-2 right now. She's at 0-2, but you know what? In this one, I thought she was even going to get the win. I really thought she was going to come out with the win at the end. So, I mean, you know, up until, of course, the third round happened, then I was like, oh no. But I mean, you know, she looked so good, and 0-2, I mean, it's just a number at that point. I mean, you can easily come back from that. She's so young too. She's looking really good. So I think she can easily come back, get a win there, work on some things, get the wins going, and come back and maybe get into the UFC in the future too. You never know. We need a lot of women. Plus, also, I believe actually I saw online, I saw on the Twitter that Demers is actually, they were fighting at bantamweight bantamweight by the way. And I will say, I did think she looked a little bit undersized, and they actually said that she was kind of undersized and that she'll be fighting at flyweight next time. And honestly, that's incredible. I mean, she was doing so well at bantamweight against who I thought seemed like a pretty pure bantamweight, to be honest. So I think fighting at 125 for Demers, that's amazing. I think we're going to see a great comeback from her. I really do. Anyway, fight number 3, Mitch Strzelecki got the TKO in the first round over Matty Havorka. I ended up giving him his bonus for that. Both of them came in heavy, landed some early combos, hit the ground pretty hard after Havorka got him down there, tried to get some control time. After that, though, Strzelecki was the one who reversed it, landed on top, likely stole the round away, but it didn't really matter. Matty slid in some deep armbar attempts throughout the round, but thanks to the control time, Ground and pound, Strizella was taking the lead. But like I said, it didn't matter because Mitch bombarded Hovorka with some ground and pound, got that first round TKO finish. Great win for Strizella there. And he got the bonus. After that, Ryan Rahovic, Josh Kwiatkowski. We saw another finish here. The first round, all offense from both sides. My God, this fight was good too. There were so many good fights, like I said. Both of them stumbled. Both of them landed some heavy combos. Thanks to the control time and the huge punches that busted Rahovic open. Seemed like Josh was pretty ahead on the cards, I will say. After almost getting finished at the end of the opening round, though, Rahovic came in with some heavy offense, landed some big combos, stumbled Josh. But then it was Kwiatkowski who landed the heavier shots, wobbled Ryan, forced him to shoot in for a takedown. So Ryan shot in for that takedown, but it was Josh who ended up on top, let loose some dangerous ground and pound. Rahovic was threatening some submissions there, but, you know, he was doing it from the bottom. So ultimately, Josh was definitely ahead 2-0 on the cards going into the final round there. He avoided the early damage this time, Kwiatkowski did, and chose to take the fight to the ground early. And just as it looked like he was just going to cruise to that comfortable decision win, Rahovic snuck into a quick arm triangle out of nowhere. I mean, it was insane. Plus, with a minute left in the fight, people, a minute left in the fight, throws out the arm triangle to steal the win with a huge submission. I mean, crazy come from behind win. I mean, you should have seen this guy. He was absolutely destroyed. I mean, not destroyed, but I mean, you know, he was looking pretty bad, in pretty bad shape. Come from behind win for Ryan Rahovic there. Obviously gave that a bonus, the submission bonus. Incredible. After that, we had our first title fight of the night at featherweight. We had Mateo Vogel, Nick Ouellet, and we had a strange, very rare majority decision in this one. Really weird. This one started off. This one really took off when it hit the ground. Not so much on the feet before that. Ouellet was looking good, finding himself on top. By the way, this was my fight of the night. It was that good. It was so good. Again, so many good fights, but this one, I had 2 fight of the nights, by the way. I've never done that, but again, it was so good, I had to do it. So the first one, of course, was the ladies' fight. This was the other one. And they're both equal to me, so don't even ask me which one I thought was better. I'm not sure. Ouellet looked great, found himself on top, but Vogel showed his jiu-jitsu skills, sunk in a pretty deep arm triangle, almost ended the fight early. From there, they were switching positions, scrambling back and forth, with Ouellet finding himself on top. With multiple submission attempts, though, Vogel may have taken the opening round. But with all the control time, it could have still been Ouellet taking the round. I wasn't really sure, honestly. I mean, it was really that close. The second round, way more one-sided this time, clearly favored Ouellet, thanks to some pretty dominant wrestling and some pretty big elbows, slicing Vogel open. There was blood everywhere. Seriously, some of the most blood I've ever seen in any fight. I mean, it was crazy. By the way, made it super slippery, or the whole rest of the fight, actually. Only 2 rounds in, and it looked like Vogel had been hit by a car. Seriously, it really did. Blood all over the canvas. The third round, pretty back and forth. Vogel opened the round on top. Ouellet flipped things around to get back until Vogel switched it up again. Submissions, ground and pounds to close the round. So it seemed like probably a 2 and what did I say here? I didn't write it down, so we're just going to keep going. I'm not going to speculate. Switching things up. The round opened with some big combos on the feet from both guys. From there, though, they moved it back to the ground, of course, with Ouellet finding himself on top once again. Spent the majority of the round on top. But Vogel made it interesting. What was I going to say? Found himself on top again, attempted a few more submissions to close out the fourth round. In the final round, it seemed as though Vogel might have had the edge in stamina, found himself in the dominant position along the fence and on the ground. He may not have been on top, but Ouellet was making it very, very interesting with some extremely deep submission attempts. That said, it was a pretty clear round for Vogel thanks to all that control time. It was pretty hard. Like I said, very hard to tell which way the judges were going to lean. And like I said, it ended up being a majority decision. So it was obviously very, very close. I would have gone for 3-2 for Ouellet, thanks to the early dominance, but it was pretty much as close as it could be. In the end, the judges scored it a majority decision in favor of Vogel. But like I said, so close. Really could have gone either way here. Next up, the co-main. It was a bantamweight title fight here. Moved away from all the wrestling we had in the last one, and really a lot of the wrestling throughout the night. Opened up the round with a bunch of striking. Both of them threw some wild combos. Both of them landed some big ones. Pretty dead even round. The momentum started to shift, though, in the second round as the defending champ Surrey City. Oh, I really should have said who was in this fight. Surrey City and Austin Russell made it to the end again. Anyway, back to that. City uses forward pressure, crisp combos to start really moving ahead on those cards. And City shifted away from striking in the third round. Then he started to grapple more with Russell. Thanks to that change in strategy, City really started to take a pretty big lead on those cards. The fourth round, more of that from City, spending most of the round in top position. And even when they weren't on the ground, he was still winning on the feet, picking them apart there. Closing out the fight, all City once again. I always thought it was Sidey, but they kept saying City, so I'm going with City. Anyway, using his wrestling to control Russell and shut down all of his offense, and to really, really put a stamp on it, Surrey went crazy, throwing flying knees, spinning back fists, trying to land a highlight reel finish. Just that confident. You love to see that. I mean, you don't love to see it when he somehow loses after all of it, but you love to see it anyway, the entertainment value. Ultimately, pretty clear decision win for Surrey City. Next up, we closed the night. The main event, we had a super welterweight title fight. I believe that would probably, actually, I don't even know what super welterweight is. I didn't look up what the weight was, but that seemed weird to me because welterweight is 170. Middleweight is 180. What's super welterweight? Welterweight 175? Like, I don't know. Seemed weird to me, but whatever. We had the super welterweight title fight here. Dejan, I don't actually even know how to say his name. Dejan Kajic and Saeed Mirzai. Unfortunate end to the night, though. I mean, this was looking like it was going to be a crazy, crazy fight. Mirzai finished his last one really quick. I saw that. That was, I think, just like a couple of months ago. He looked really, really good in that one. But he was having a much harder time in the first round here. Kajic led most of the early exchanges with forward pressure, even stumbled Mirzai a couple of times. Sadly, though, the fight was cut prematurely. Mirzai verbally ended the fight. He dislocated his own shoulder after throwing a strike. He went like this, missed it, momentum kept going, threw the shoulder out of its socket there. You don't want to see that. I mean, it's fine seeing all these crazy injuries when it's actually inflicted by something, but when, you miss something and then injure yourself, you don't want to see the fight end that way. And it was in the very first round. And I mean, sure, we were probably seeing Kajic win, he was winning the fight for sure. And he probably would have gone on to just slowly pick Mirzai apart. But still, I mean, you never know. You never know what was going to happen. Sad way to end the night. But yeah. And of course, Kajic looked great, defended his belt, and he did end up offering Mirzai a rematch because of the way it ended like that. Again, nobody wants to see that. So he did offer him a rematch there, which is good. After that, well, I mean, not after that, for the bonuses, we saw Mitch Trezella, like I said, KO of the night, sub of the night, Ryan Rahovich for that. My God, all the squeaking in the background from Loki. We saw the sub of the night, Ryan Rahovich, the comeback win. I mean, that was insane, that comeback win. Then we had 2 brawls of the night. Never done that before, but I mean, they were both so good, and they both deserve to be talked about. We had the women's fight, Alana Cook, Maria Demers. I had to mention that because, again, first women's fight I've ever seen outside of the UFC. There has to be more. We need to have more women's fights, seriously. And this one just proved that. I mean, it was so good, so even too. Then we had Mateo Vogel, Nick Ouellet. So much blood, so much action, so much carnage. I had to give that one a bonus too. So 2 brawls of the night. And most valuable fighter for me, pretty clear for me, honestly, Surrey City. BFL, seriously, they really do have some great fighters. I've noticed that already. But there's something special about Surrey City. I mean, he's almost flawless, really, in a 5-round. These title fights were 5 rounds, by the way. I know we're talking about, smaller leagues here, but they were still 5-rounders. And he was amazing the whole 5 rounds against, by the way, Russell was undefeated going into this. So he did this to somebody who was undefeated, who I also saw before, and I know how good he is. So to do that to somebody who's undefeated in 5 rounds like that, just all throughout the 5 rounds, I mean, seriously, I don't want to jinx it or anything, but it seems like at some point we're definitely going to be seeing this guy on the Contender Series or just straight into the UFC at some point, because he looks so good recently, and he's still very young. So yeah, amazing performance by Surrey City there. And that was it for BFL 72, BFL Mania. We've still got one tiny more thing to talk about before we take our break, before we talk about UFC 274. Also on this week, my God, I'm blazing through this, by the way, because this is me going fast. I don't think I've ever talked about this much stuff in it's a little over an hour now. We're really going through it here. We had the start of The Ultimate Fighter Season 30. Amanda Nunes, or technically Juliana Pena versus Amanda Nunes. You got to put the champ first where she belongs right now. Episode 1. So that was actually just yesterday, because this is recorded, of course. Well, not recorded. Well, it's streamed out live on Wednesdays. I do that. So I watched it, of course, last night. I've got UFC Fight Pass. I've got to watch The Ultimate Fighter, of course. So, of course, episode 1, we had to pick our teams going in here. The only real standout that I kept seeing, I mean, a pretty obvious standout, Usman's brother, Kamaru Usman's brother. I mean, you got to think you got to be watching him, seeing what he's going to do. Is he going to do anything crazy? I have no idea. But the name alone, you got to keep your eyes on him. Of course, by the way, Usman himself was on The Ultimate Fighter and won and hasn't lost since, of course. So, will we see the same thing? I don't know. We'll see. But that is one to watch for sure. Excuse me. That was out of nowhere. Just trying to breathe. I'm talking so much. And of course, this season is the heavyweights, which, yes, Usman's brother is a heavyweight, plus the ladies flyweights. They wanted to diversify it for the 30th season. 1 women's division, 1 men's division. You'll love to see it. We need to see. I personally, though, I don't really know why they went with the flyweights, because I think it's pretty obvious what we really need is more bantamweights. It's cool and all having it's amazing having the women part of The Ultimate Fighter, but you need to develop the bantamweight division. Why are we seeing more flyweights? Anyway, that's my opinion. I don't know. I wanted to see bantamweights That's just me. I don't know. We need to develop that division. That's all I'm saying. Because the other divisions, strawweight and flyweight, are so stacked already. They're so good. To then throw in more flyweights. I don't know. We need more bantamweights. That's what I wanted to see. That aside, it's going to be a good season. Anyway, so yeah, of course, we saw them pick the teams and all that. Then we saw the first fight of the season. It was Zach Pauga from Team Juliana Pena and Niall Bartling from Amanda Nunes's team. Some backstory. This is what we're going to do every week now. We're going to give a little bit of backstory. We're basically going to just kind of sum up what we saw in the episode and how the fight went too. And, maybe some other fun, interesting things that we saw too. So yeah, Pauga, he was actually a cop leading up to the show. I believe he was a cop. I think they said up until about 5 months before the show. And then he was actually also a pro rugby player before he was a cop. And he was actually an alternate for the Houston Texans in the NFL. So, I mean, clearly very much a tough guy, very much an athlete. I mean, you got to be athletic to not just be a pro rugby player, but also, an alternate in the NFL like that for the Texans. And then, of course, joining the cops as well. So, I mean, you knew he was going to be good, that's for sure, or strong at least, that he had some power behind him as a heavyweight too. Bartling, though, came in as a pig farmer. Not too much to say about that, but we all know, if you know any farmers out there, and I've met a few, even though I am very much a city boy, I have met a lot of farmers, and the one thing that I can say about all of them, they're very much strong. They've got that farm boy strength, or in some cases, of course, the farm girl strength. They've got the farmer strength in there. They're lifting stuff all day, super strong. And of course, actually, Bartling is also a wrestler. So, I mean, you can imagine the grip, the takedown strength that he has, of course, as a wrestler and a farmer. So very interesting matchup there. Started off pretty quick. Both of them pretty quick on their feet, by the way. And they're also, I would say, undersized for heavyweights. Stop, Loki. Seriously, stop. Both of them fairly light for heavyweights. They both came in at around 240-ish. That's pretty light for a heavyweight. That's almost like, I mean, Bozer is a little bit heavier. He's about 245 maybe, but still, then you're talking about that kind of heavyweight where they're both just quicker and more skilled. That's what you're kind of looking at for both of these guys. But yeah, started off quick. Both of them pretty quick on their feet, like I said. Niall landed some pretty good ones early, shot in for some takedowns, but Pauga stuffed every single one of them. And I mean, they did that in the lead up too, that they knew exactly what they were doing here. Bartling knew his only path to victory was doing stuff on the ground, and Pauga also knew that. So he was working on takedown defense a lot before the fight, and it obviously paid off quite a bit. Then Pauga started to get more into it, landed some pretty big shots, even got some ground and pound in. As the round went on, Bartling then shot for some more takedowns. Took him a while, but Pauga actually slipped. Very unfortunate. Found himself in the dominant position. He found himself on the ground with Bartling on top. That only lasted about 30 seconds, though. Pauga got up pretty quick. So, I mean, seriously, that takedown defense and also the ability to get up, really good for Pauga, especially when you know your opponent is a very, very good wrestler. So, very impressive by Pauga after that. So, after 5 minutes, it was pretty hard to tell who was ahead, I will say. But if I had to pick one, I would have said Pauga because he had a little bit of better striking. I mean, it was really close on the feet. Plus, he shut down all of that wrestling. So he showed that he's obviously still capable of being good on the ground, and he shut down all of that wrestling. So because of that, I gave him the first round. The second round started off with more back and forth striking from and Bartling trying to shoot for more takedowns. Bartling was working very, very hard to get those takedowns, but just couldn't land any of them. And in between that, as Niall was grabbing the legs, Pauga was actually letting loose some pretty good ground and pound. And that kind of kept happening where Niall found himself on the ground, kind of trying to grab the legs, trying to get a takedown, and then Pauga would let loose some ground and pound. Just as the round was ending, Pauga found himself on top again, even threatened a submission this time. And after 2 rounds, by the way, these are 2-round exhibition fights. We're not talking about 3-rounders here because they don't want to burn out the fighters before the end of the season because they've got to fight 3 times and then the finale. So 2-round fights here. That was it. And no need for a draw or a split to, whatever here. Very clear. Well, not very clear, but I mean, Pauga obviously won the 2nd round. And I kind of gave him the 1st round too. So I thought it was a fairly clear way to give Pauga the decision there. Yeah, and they ended up the judges agreed. Whoever was judging it, I don't know if Dana White judges it himself with I think Forrest Griffin was there with him this time. I don't know if that's who was judging the fights. I don't really know. They actually don't even mention who judges the fights. But I had it unanimous decision. Well, I mean, they had a unanimous decision for Pauga. As for the future in the rest of the show, and I'm going to do this every time too. I'm going to talk about the little bit of backstory. I'm going to talk about the fight, and then I'm going to say how I think that person is going to do for the rest of the show. Of course, very hard to tell when you're just talking about literally the first episode and you haven't seen any of the other heavyweights fight yet. It's tough to say, but I will say he is a lighter heavyweight, and that is a tough sell. That is tough to be. It's one of the hardest things I could say you probably could do in the UFC is be a lighter heavyweight, because then you've got people that are much, much bigger. So they've obviously got the power advantage. So, I mean, you've got to use your quickness and then some stand-up skill in there to you basically point, you basically become a point fighter at that point. I don't want to say that, but when there's a huge weight difference, that's kind of what it is, because you're probably not going to be finishing the much heavier guy. And it also makes the wrestling much harder because you're not as big. You're not going to be able to do as much there. So it's tough to say how Pauga is going to do, but I think he is going to kind of struggle a little bit. But again, it depends how good these other heavyweights are. Personally, I wasn't thrown I wasn't like, oh my God, these heavyweights are so good. I was not thinking that at all, really. I was kind of like, okay, if these guys were in light heavyweight, I'd be like, oh, okay, these guys are pretty good. But as heavyweights, I'm not so sure. So if there are larger heavyweights on the show, which they haven't really shown yet, Pauga is going to struggle a little bit. But you know what? He looked good. He had the takedown defense. He had some semi-decent striking in there. So, we could definitely see him keep going. And by the way, he's still undefeated, by the way. So, he's still undefeated. Well, technically, even if he lost, he still wouldn't have a loss on his record because these are exhibitions. But you got to keep in mind, he also still is undefeated. But yeah, it's tough to say what's going to happen, though. I really think he kind of more so belongs at light heavyweight, personally. That's my opinion. But anyway, we shall see. We shall see. I mean, I love the show. I can't wait to see what's going to happen. So yeah, we'll come back next week for that. But anyway, now, of course, we're going to talk about UFC 274. But of course, we're going to take a quick break first for a minute. I'll have a sip of water, and then we'll be right back with UFC 274, one of the biggest pay-per-views this year. 2 title fights. And then, of course, Michael Chandler, Tony Ferguson in just before the title fight. So we'll be right back with that.
Allow me to introduce Pie Stick Vodka, a new way to celebrate victory. Gather around the glass with an award-winning, ultra-premium Canadian-made vodka. You probably won't listen, when I say high stick vodka has a smooth, hard-hitting taste, or that it's developed in the birthplace of hockey. You won't listen when I say high stick vodka is a tribute to the game of hockey, or when I tell you it's distilled 4 times using Canada's purest mountain spring water to provide an authentic, remarkable flavor. But maybe you will listen when I say it comes in a fucking hockey stick. Showcase your passion for hockey with our limited edition hand-blown hockey stick bottle. Whether you're celebrating victory or drinking to defeat, High Stick Vodka is better after every shot. Visit us at highstickvodka.com. It also comes in this regular bottle. Celebrate victory. Drink responsibly.
And we're back. So, of course, UFC 274, let's talk about it. The main card, of course, it opens up, my God, what a way to open it. Cowboy Cerrone, Joe Lazzone, a battle of the UFC veterans. Excuse me. I mean, you know, Cowboy, I think he's close to the record for you at most UFC wins of all time. I think he's second or something like that now. After I think it might have been Miller who dethroned him. Anyway, so I mean, yeah, Cowboy all the way back in 2011 when the UFC merged with WEC, all the way back since then. Fought pretty much everybody at both lightweight and welterweight. But he's gone through a bit of a rough patch recently, and that's kind of an understatement, actually. 0-5-1 since 2019. Not so great. He may not have won any of those, but 4 of them were to ranked UFC superstars, not just good fighters, but superstars in Tony Ferguson, Justin Gaethje, Conor McGregor, and then also Anthony Pettis thrown in there. So, you know, like when you lose them, it's like, okay, you know, those are fair losses to have. His most recent loss happened a year ago to Alex Morono, who finished him in the very first round. But Morono is also, I believe, I'm pretty sure, a welterweight. Yeah, as for Lazzone, most recent bout ended actually in a win, but it was over kind of somebody fairly unknown, and it was all the way back in 2019. Before that, he struggled just like Cowboy, lost 3 in a row. Amazingly, Lazzone actually joined the UFC all the way back in 2006. So they're both very much veterans, as I said. But I would say there's somebody who has the clear edge in this fight, and that's Cowboy. He's not only one of the most active fighters in UFC history. I mean, he's also, of course, got some of the most wins in UFC history. But to me, the difference comes in the fact that he's got the recent welterweight history. Since this bout is taking place at lightweight, Cowboy should have that edge in power, thanks to all, of course, the experience, the activity, the power, and really the determination to get a win, because he's so hungry to get that win, to possibly retire after this one, maybe, or maybe after another 1 or 2. You know, he's not going to be around for too much longer. So he wants, of course, to get that win. And all the fans want it too, of course. And he's also got his son there, who I believe is something like maybe 3 or 4 or 5 now. So, of course, he wants to win in front of his little guy too. So all of that put together, I think we're seeing a decision win for the Cowboy, Donald Cerrone, in this one. So let's take a look at those odds. We will jump over to Bet99, throw up the banner. There it is. Okay, we open up with Cowboy at minus 186 right now. Lazzone plus 150. Personally, I think that actually might be a little generous. I think really people are looking at the fact that Cerrone, you know, Cowboy hasn't won in his last 6 fights. And I totally see that. I totally agree. But at the same time, a lot of those were welterweight fights. So he's dropping down to lightweight for this one. Lazzone hasn't fought since 2019. and got a decision win over somebody that I didn't even really know who it was. So I mean, minus 186 for that. Those are incredible odds for that. So minus 186, very clear choice right there. The over-under on this, over-under 2.5. And it is at plus 133 for over 2.5 right now. And personally, I would say that's clearly the way to go. I mean, they're both pretty tough. They don't necessarily have a whole lot of finishing power right now. So I'm going with the decision. I think it's definitely worth that risk. Plus 133. I'm going all the way in on that one. After that, we have OSP, Ovince St. Preux, and Mauricio Hua. I always get those two mixed up. Mauricio Hua. Or Shogun Hua, as everybody else would call him, of course. So we're going to go with Shogun on this one, of course. I mean, not for the pick. Not for the pick. But I'm going to start saying Shogun instead of Mauricio. Anyway, Shogun Hua, one of the legends of the UFC light heavyweight division, joining all the way back in 2007. He's lost to everyone from Lyoto Makita, Dan Henderson, to Chael Sonnen, all the way to now John Jones Gustafsson and Anthony Smith. In his most recent trip back to the octagon, he was a victim of Paul Craig getting one of those come from behind wins. I mean, my goodness, Craig has been doing that so much recently. It's crazy. Getting finished in the second round back in 2021. OSP, also storied UFC career, but has actually moved between heavyweight and light heavyweight, losing to Jones, Teixeira, and Reyes, as well as Rothwell and Bozer. Their histories are pretty much identical, really. What separates them, though, and it's similar to what I just said about Cowboy, it's the history at heavyweight for OSP. That tells me that he's got probably a little bit extra power. The most noteworthy point about this matchup, though, as well, on top of that, is that they've already fought each other. Back in 2014, they met, and OSP used that power, the power I was just talking about, to grab a 34-second KO. So considering that history, the OSP heavyweight power there, we could easily see another finish from OSP, from St. Preux. So that's where I'm going with it. I'm going OSP by finish on this one. By finish. And we've got, for the odds, Shogun Hua plus 200, OSP minus 250. I would say that's maybe a little slanted, maybe a little too much slanted towards OSP, but I'm still very much giving OSP the win. So I'm still going with the minus 250, of course. That's more for something I would probably put on a parlay, I would say. The over-under 1.5 rounds here. The over is minus 158. Under 1.5 is at plus 122. And really, you could go either way on this one. Do you think OSP is going to get that early finish again? Maybe go with the plus 122. Those are decent. But if you think maybe they're going to last a little bit longer, because it is 1.5 rounds, you might want to go for that minus 158. Personally, I would probably go for the minus 158. That's just me. But I mean, again, it's so close. We're talking about, because again, I mean, OSP did finish the fight in 40 seconds last time. So it's not crazy. It's not crazy to go with the under on that at plus 122. After that, we've got the first of 3 absolutely insane fights. It actually probably is the top matchup of the night. Michael Chandler, Tony Ferguson. My God. I can't fucking wait. I cannot wait to see this one. On one side, you've got the guy who has been taking the UFC by storm. Michael Chandler has not been in a boring fight yet. He opened, of course, taking on Dan Hooker. get, oh, by the way, every single one of these was in the past year and a half. Keep that in mind, by the way, folks. I mean, that's a crazy way to start your UFC career, especially considering all three of those fights were insane to watch. So yeah, Dan Hooker, of course, highlight reel KO in that fight. Went on to challenge for that vacant belt against Charles Oliveira. Of course, lost that fight because we're seeing the champ Charles Oliveira tonight. But you know what? Michael Chandler won the first round of that fight, looked incredible, and really got a startling KO loss in the second round. So, I mean, you know, Chandler, very much incredible fighter. And then after that, took on the title challenger tonight, Justin Gaethje, in the last one. Probably fight of the year last year. Absolutely insane, pure insanity that fight was. It was close, but, you know, Gaethje was clearly winning that one. Kind of, I don't want to say destroying Chandler, but yeah, it was there was a lot of blood and a lot of mangled faces after that. So yeah, but crazy to watch. And Chandler still held his own and managed to withstand all that firepower coming back at him. Of course, on the other side, Ferguson, very similar fighter, actually. Not a lot of people have really been commenting on how similar these two guys are, but they really are. Neither one of them is ever really in a boring fight. And of course, Ferguson hasn't been doing great recently, but was on a 12-fight win streak before that. Don't forget that, folks. Since then, of course, really everything turned around with COVID. He was going on the 12-fight win streak pre-COVID. And then now, since COVID arrived, not so good. Lost 3 in a row. Got absolutely destroyed by Justin Gaethje. Then he lost to the champ Oliveira in a decision, getting his arm almost snapped in half. One of the craziest, I have still to this day no idea how Ferguson managed to get out of that submission. I mean, I have never seen, nobody's ever seen Ferguson cringe from pain before, but even he was like, holy fucking shit, when Oliveira had his arm and his leg there. I mean, yeah, had his arm and his leg there. Absolutely insane to see. Disgusting to watch. But anyway, that's just who Ferguson is. So neither one of these guys has any quit in them. We're going to see a crazy brawl, all-out brawl, no matter what we're talking about. I mean, it's going to be insane. Explosive, nonstop offense from both sides. So who is going to win this one? Seems as though, to be honest, as much as I like Ferguson, I also like Chandler too, of course. But it seems like Chandler holds all the cards here. Chandler has been way more impressive recently. Oh yeah, by the way, Ferguson also lost to Dariush after that. Oliveira won. Yeah, so it seems Chandler just way more impressive recently. They're evenly matched up on the ground. Because let's not forget, Ferguson, very amazing, quite the amazing fighter on the ground. Chandler, very much good on the ground as well. So to me, that means it's going to be pretty much a stand-up brawl, which is why Chandler, I would say, is very clearly going to win this, because he's just really he's really good on the feet, like really, really good. So yeah, thanks to those slight edges. I mean, he has, to me, more power, more refined stand-up skills. So to me, I think we're actually going to see a repeat of what we saw with Gaethje and Ferguson. I think we're going to see Ferguson get absolutely mangled on the feet, but he's going to make it to the end in a decision. I think we're going to see Chandler win by decision here. And there's going to be a lot of blood, a lot of damage, probably on both sides, but I would say Chandler's going to win this, and it's probably going to a decision. I would say that's a pretty safe bet, which is actually insane now that I'm looking at the odds. I mean, yes, Chandler is a huge favorite going into this. I don't really think that's really deserving of a minus 400. betting line right now, because that's what it's sitting at, minus 400 for Chandler. I don't really see it that one-sided, but is it worth throwing in a parlay? Yes. Yes, it very much is. And Ferguson is at plus 300 right now. So if you think Ferguson can throw something crazy out there, which he's always capable of, you know, maybe you throw a couple of bucks at the plus 300. But I would definitely say that Chandler, you know, throwing him in a parlay would make a lot of sense. As for the over under, that's where it gets really interesting, which is what I was talking about just a couple minutes ago. The over under is actually at 1.5 rounds right now. I have no idea why, because you're talking about two of the toughest people in the whole division, probably in the whole UFC. So it's crazy to me that this is actually at 1.5 rounds. Clearly the way to go is the over 1.5, minus 172. I'm definitely putting some money on that one. So yeah, over 1.5 for minus 172 for over 1.5. Definitely the way to go on that. The co-main event, the first title fight of the night, the strawweights are going at it. Thug Rose Namajunas versus Carla Esparza. Finally, we've got a women's title fight. I actually don't even remember the last time we had one, because I don't think Valentina's fought this year. And then before that, I think the most recent one would have been Nunes. So yeah, I don't even, like, it's been so long since we've been seeing women's title fights. It's weird. So yeah, we finally got another one. Thug Rose. By the way, both of them came off of The Ultimate Fighter season 20. And actually, Thug Rose lost to Carla Esparza in the finale of that one. Since that loss, though, she has been almost flawless, Thug Rose, with a split decision loss to Kovalevich and a devastating, to be honest, somewhat fluky. It was kind of a fluke, I will say, and a lot of people are kind of thinking that KO via a slam, because she had Andrade on her back there. Or actually, no, Rose was on Andrade's back. Andrade jumped, landed straight on Rose's head and neck, knocked out immediately, devastating KO. But I mean, you never really see stuff like that. So again, a little bit of a fluke there. Anyway, not that Andrade is, you know, bad by any means, but she did win the rematch. Anyway, outside of those losses, though, she's got 2 wins over Joanna, and of course, 2 wins over Zhang Weili, which we just saw last year. One interesting fact, though, and this is very much relevant to this one, she's been in 4 other rematches. This is her 5th rematch fight. This is her, like I said, 4 other rematches. Tisha Torres, Joanna, Andrade, Weili. She had rematch fights against all 4 of those, and she has gone 4-0 in the second fights. And this one, like I said, she lost the first one to Esparza. She is coming in to a rematch, her 5th rematch fight against Esparza on this one. So keep that in mind. That is a very interesting fact. As for Esparza, as I just said, she ended up winning TUF 20 over Rose. Since then, she's actually done pretty well too, really, sitting at an 8-4 record in the UFC with losses to Joanna, Marcos, Gadelia, and Suarez. Heading into this one, though, 5-fight win streak over top contenders like the Karate Hottie, Marina Rodriguez, and Yan Xiaonan. So there's no doubt that this is going to be a pretty close matchup. I mean, they've already fought. And I mean, really all the fights in that strawweight division are pretty close. So I think we're going to see a pretty close fight here. Physically, they're almost identical, except for the fact that Rose is 5 years younger. That being said, there's a few reasons that have me clearly leaning towards Thug Rose here. She's got the better record. Her 2 losses were pretty shaky. Like I said, you got a split decision loss and then that crazy slam from Andrade. And she's been looking very strong, skilled, and determined recently. She said that she was battling, of course, with some mental issues before. She said that she's cleared all that up, and it seems pretty clear that she has very much cleared all that up. So yeah, and then of course there's the added fact that I talked about. You've got Thug Rose sitting at 4-0 in all of her rematch fights. So I think, it sounds silly that that's a factor in here, but it says a lot. It says that she learns from the first fights, comes back even stronger in the second one every single time to overcome the opponent. That's what that means. So, 4-0 in the rematches. I think she's going to be 5-0 after this one, but I do think it's going to be close. So I would say Thug Rose by decision on this one. That's what we've got. So let's look at those odds. Thug Rose sitting at -213 right now. Esparza +171. And I would say that's pretty accurate because it is close, but I would say Rose has, she definitely has a slight edge in this one. So definitely going with Rose on this one. -213, still great odds. As for the over-under 4.5 rounds. So they're very clearly leaning towards the decision on this one. I would go the same way, -184. But you know what? Considering how good Rose is, it's not crazy to think that she could get a finish here. There's 5 rounds. She's been doing great. I mean, she did finish Zhang Weili as well. So, it's not insane to maybe even bet on the under at +142 because there's really not a whole lot going for you at -184. I mean, you could, but I don't know. It might be worth a slight bit of risk to go with the under, but I do think it's going to be over. So again, you could really go either way depending on how you think about it. After that, we've got the main event, the lightweight title fight. Charles Oliveira, Justin Gaethje, back to defend his belt once again. Charles Oliveira, since he lost to Felder back in 2017, he's gone on one of the longest winning streaks in the UFC right now with 10 wins in a row. And the last 4, obviously the most impressive, with finishes over Kevin Lee, Chandler, and Poirier, as well as a decision win over Ferguson, which we also talked about. Since beating Lee, I mean, he seems to really have reached a whole new level, and honestly kind of seems unbreakable at this point. He struggled in the opening round against both Chandler and Poirier, but after that, he quickly turns it around, gets his jiu-jitsu going, and then starts to dominate the fight from there. He then tends to get a submission to add to his UFC record. He's got the UFC record for submissions, and it's not even close. I can't remember what the record is, but nobody, like the second person is a distant second at this point. Gaethje, also a finisher, grabbing more UFC performance bonuses than wins, which is mind-blowing. That's crazy. That's a crazy, crazy stat, seriously. I mentioned this earlier with his gnarly win over Ferguson in 2019. And of course, his convincing win over Chandler last year. In between those wins, though, he was dominated and submitted by Khabib in Khabib's final fight. And that is very important for this one specifically. Just like all of Gaethje's fights and all of Oliveira's recent fights, this is another matchup that I'm sure is going to produce some highlights. It's going to be amazing too. Oliveira holds a slight 4-inch reach advantage, which very, very much helps him quite a bit in this matchup because, of course, his ground game, trying to get the takedowns, but of course, his striking too. He can stay at a distance and land his own strikes. Gaethje likely holds an advantage on the feet, though, because of his power, but Oliveira has the very, very clear advantage on the ground. And that is exactly what we saw in the Khabib matchup. So like I said, I think this is a very, very similar to that matchup, except Oliveira is better on the feet than Khabib. I'm sorry to all the Khabib fans out there, but it's true. Sadly for Gaethje, though, Oliveira is more than capable of handling his offense on the feet. I mean, he was lit up pretty bad by Chandler, and he still withstood it. He fought Kevin Lee. He fought Ferguson. Very much great on the feet. So he can clearly withstand all of Gaethje's power coming back on him. But the difference is, can Gaethje stand up to Oliveira's ground game? I just don't think so. And that's where the difference is. And that's exactly what we saw also in Poirier's matchup with Oliveira. I mean, they really went both the same way. Khabib versus Gaethje, Oliveira versus Poirier. It's a similar kind of matchup. I think we're going to see pretty much the same thing again. Yeah. So, I mean, but look, like if Gaethje, that being said, though, I really obviously think Oliveira is going to win this, especially because of that ground game and submissions. But that being said, if Gaethje can push the pace early, throw everything at Oliveira, which is what Chandler was trying to do because he knew that too. If Gaethje can do that with his extra power, there is a chance that he might get a finish. But after that, if it moves into the second round, I think we're done. I think Oliveira is just going to cruise to either a decision win or a submission, but probably a submission win after that. So does Justin have a chance? Yes, but it's only really in the first round. After that, pretty much all Oliveira after that, I would say. Oh yeah, so let's look at the odds. You've got Oliveira minus 175, Gaethje plus 142. Honestly, I think that's slightly generous because I would actually say that Poirier had a much better chance of winning than Gaethje did. So I think this is going to be an easier fight for Oliveira compared to his last one. So, I mean, definitely putting money on Oliveira in this one. Yeah, the over-under, I don't know why it's set at this, but that's really interesting. Over-under 1.5 rounds. 1.5. The over is minus 200. The under is under 1.5 is plus 154. I'm obviously going with the over on this at minus 200. But you know what? Like I said, Gaethje has a chance in the first round, and Oliveira always has a chance in the first or second round. So you know what? Plus 154 in the second isn't that insane, or under 1.5 isn't that insane if you really think about it. But the safer bet is clearly the minus 200 at over 1.5. But you know what? Hey, if you're feeling the risk at plus 154, go for it. Go for it. Nothing crazy about that. We've also got some great prelims. So before we go, I'll talk about some decent prelims that we've got here. The first one I want to talk about, we've got the ladies, Tracy Cortez. Huge fan of Tracy Cortez. Love Cortez. On the other side, Melissa Gatto. I'm also a fan of Gatto, though. So, you know, no fan favorite, no favoritism here. Very, very close fight. I mean, they're both up and coming, rising contenders, both really young too. They're both on win streaks, huge win streaks, by the way. They're both, to me, the future of the flyweight division. And I really do think, actually, that both of them will be ranked within the next couple of years. I really do. They're both so good. I would say, actually, that they might be fighting each other too early, that this might be, you know, we could see easily a rematch down the line of these two, and it's going to be good. But anyway, for this week, we need to figure out who is going to be farther along on their journey for this weekend. So who is slightly farther along? Cortez, she's been in the UFC since 2019, grabbed her contract on the Contender Series. Since then, she's won all 3 of her fights, including, Yes, she's won all 3 of her fights, including over actually a fairly promising prospect, Stephanie Egger. Gato hasn't been around quite as long, making her debut just last year, but since then has won 2 fights and got 2 finishes in that, which is very rare for the flyweight division. So that's already very impressive. Her most recent win was a body kick TKO over Sojara Eubanks, and she is now undefeated 8-0-2. Incredible. So physically, there's nothing really separating these two. The differences come in the recent history to me. Cortez has looked good. And of course, she is dating. I don't think she's engaged or anything like that, but dating Brian Ortega. So she does have that going for her, because I can't imagine, like, that's got to help her, I'm sure. But Cortez has looked great, but all of her UFC wins have come by decisions, and she hasn't really had a statement win yet. Gato, on the other hand, 2 vicious finishes with a broken arm stoppage, and then capping it off with a body kick TKO. That's a crazy combination. Broke somebody's arm in her debut and then followed it up with a body kick TKO. That's crazy. So to me, it's going to be an entertaining fight. It's going to be a close fight, but I think Gato has that edge thanks to the extra finishing ability. I mean, you get a body kick TKO and you break somebody's arm in the other one. I mean, to me, that just screams that you have a slight advantage. Just a slight advantage, again, because Cortez is good. So if you go over to the odds, so I'm going Gato by decision on this one, because Cortez, I think, is strong enough to make it to a decision. And we're talking about flyweight still. So I'm going with a decision, but I'm not opposed to seeing a Gato finish here. You could definitely bet on that. But anyway, so I'm going with Gato on this. The odds, Tracy Cortez -158. So she is the favorite right now. Gato sitting at +128. So we've got an underdog pick here. This is my underdog pick of the week. I should really make a graphic for that, or maybe even have like a special section in the article. This is my underdog of the week here. Melissa Gato +128. So I mean, when you see 2 fighters that are this close, normally you bet the underdog anyway, unless there's something crazy on the one side. So, I mean, Gato just makes sense in general, but considering the fact that she's got the finishes, Gato makes more sense at +128. Fantastic odds for that. Over under 2.5 rounds, of course, because we're talking about flyweights. We're talking about a lot of decisions. So makes a lot of sense. -220 for over 2.5, under 2.5 +171. So, I mean, maybe Gato's going to get a finish. You could cash in on that +171 action, but the safer bet is probably that -220 for over 2.5. But on that one, like I said, you really could go either way. It depends do you think Gato is going to get that finish? I'm not really quite sure. So I'm going the decision, but I'm not opposed to betting the finish there. Anyway, next up, I've got 3 other ones. My goodness, we've got 4 prelims to talk about. 3 more. Brandon Royval, Matt Schnell, talking about 2 ranked flyweights in this one, both in the top 10. Royval ranked 6th. He just lost to top contenders Brandon Moreno, Alexandre Pantoja. Won his last outing, though, in a tight split decision over another ranked contender, Rogerio Bontorin. Schnell, although he fought his last one at bantamweight, is actually ranked 9th here at flyweight. This is being fought at flyweight. Just like Royval, he fought Bontorin in his last bout, which is actually kind of weird that they're at two different weight classes here. But anyway, fighting the same person. Sadly, did not work out well for him, lost by decision. And in spite of those rankings, he has not had any noteworthy wins. Plus, he does not have any wins over over anybody who is currently ranked. So I do think this is going to be a close one. You're talking about flyweights, and the flyweight division is very close. But I do think we're probably seeing the final bell here. A lot of decisions for both of these guys. Although I think Schnell is going to put up a good fight, it seems like Royval holds a fairly clear edge thanks to his history recently. Plus both of their fights were against Bontarine. That alone, I mean, Royval got the win, Schnell got the loss. So, I mean, MMA math doesn't exist. It's fake. But if it were to exist, it would tell you as well that Royval is going to get the win. So that's where I'm going on this one. And the odds are highly reflecting that as well. They've got minus 250 for Brandon Royval, Schnell plus 200. I don't know if I would say that it's that crazy one-sided, but definitely enough to still put money on Royval. And you could definitely throw him in a parlay as well at minus 250. It's a good number. The over-under, of course, because, well, they're flyweights. We've got it over under 2.5. What's interesting though, plus 120 for the over, which to me is kind of insane because you're talking about, again, flyweights who go to a lot of decisions at plus 120. So personally, I think the clear choice is Brandon Royval, decision over 2.5 there. So the plus 120 betting line, plus of course, Royval in a parlay at minus 250. I'm stumbling over my words because Loki's staring right at me about 2 feet away from me. Anyway, so another one that we've got ranked in the women's bantamweight division. Although I believe, is it being fought at featherweight? Yes, they're fighting at featherweight though. Chiasson on one side, Dumont on the other side. Although they are fighting at featherweight in this fight, like I said, they are ranked at bantamweights. Ranked 10th. She lost by submission to Pennington. Chiasson actually won TUF season 28 and has found herself at a record of 7-2 in her pro career. On the other side, you might remember Dumont from what most people refer to as the least entertaining main event of 2021. Thankfully, she was on the winning side of it, beating Aspen Ladd. And it was actually her threatening offense and the constant forward pressure, really, that led to Ladd not really throwing anything back to threaten her. Before that, though, she had just beaten one of the best female featherweights in MMA, Felicia Spencer, in a decision. Like most women's fight, I would say this is going to be pretty close, and I definitely think we're seeing a decision here. Chiasson does have a slight edge in reach with five extra inches, but Dumont seems to still hold a fairly clear edge thanks to that experience. I mean, she's got the wins over Ladd and Spencer, and Chiasson just doesn't have that. I mean, like I said, she lost to Pennington and doesn't really have too much going other than that. So to me, makes sense that Dumont should be able to overwhelm Chiasson with her power and pick her apart in a decision. So I'm seeing Dumont by decision in this one. And the odds reflect that as well. Chiasson plus 185, Dumont minus 234 right now. So I would say that's another fairly clear option for a parlay, minus 234 for Dumont. The over-under, obviously, we're talking about two women that, again, go to a lot of decisions. So we're talking about 2.5 rounds for the over-under. And it's at minus 250 for over, which is obviously the clear way to go. And under 2.5 is at plus 190. So, yeah, you could even throw that in the parlay too, over 2.5 for those two. The final one that I've got to talk about today, Randy Rude Boy Brown, Chaos Williams. They're not ranked, but they've definitely both got some hype behind them, and they've got some huge, huge power and skill behind them as well. Who was I talking about here? Oh, I didn't even write. That's weird that I didn't write down the name. We're talking about Brown. Brown has gone 8-4 in his UFC career since 2016, by the way. That's crazy that he's fought 12 times since then. Losses to Bilal, Nico Price, and Luque. After losing to Luque in 2020, though, he turned it around with an amazing first-round finish over Alex Oliveira and a decision win over Jared Gooden. KFC. Wow, I'm hungry. Chaos joined the UFC back in 2020 and has had a busy schedule with a 4-1 record here. He may have lost a decision in his to the beast Michel Pereira, but he's grabbed highlight reel finishes over Alex Morono, Abdulrazak Alhassan, and Miguel Baeza. So, I mean, yeah, physically, both of these guys are unreal and very similar, actually. But the only advantage that I see is Williams and his statement wins over Morono, Alhassan, and Baeza. I think it's going to be close. I think it's going to be entertaining to watch. That's why I'm talking about it. But because, I mean, both of these guys are so good and so fun to watch. But I think Williams should edge ahead with his extra power and might even grab a finish thanks to that. So I'm going with Williams by decision because I'm being conservative with the power that he's going to be doing. But you could maybe see a finish too. I'm going with Williams on this. The odds -106 for Rude Boy Randy Brown. And Williams sitting at -116. So I'm going definitely Williams on that, -116. I would say that's the way to go. The over-under 2.5 rounds. The over is at +105. The under -134. You know, I do kind of see a decision here at +105. So you could definitely go with that. But you know, you could always see chaotic. You could always see a finish coming from chaos. So -134 isn't that crazy. But I think really at +105, the money is probably on that over 2.5. My God, what a stream. What a broadcast. Longest one we've ever done. Talked about 4 different events. And guess what? We're going to be doing the exact same thing next week. That's right. Next week, we're going to be talking about UFC 274. We're going to be talking about Unified MMA number 43, which is tomorrow, Thursday. Then we've got, of course, the episode 2 of The Ultimate Fighter. And then, of course, we've got next week's fights. So we've got another real long one, another insane broadcast going on next week. But that's next week. I can't wait. I seriously cannot wait to see these fights on the weekend, especially, you know, Ferguson, Chandler. Then you've got the 2 title fights. I mean, it's going crazy. Get rid of that banner. There it is. Yeah, if you want to hear about all the other sports, Area 51, whoa, with the cool hat. See, it's see-through. Whoa, my head is see-through. Check out the other sports in there. That's linked below. And of course, we're partnered with Bet99. I just gave you the Bet99 odds. That is also linked below. And you can get the instant sign-up bonus from that. Loki's playing here. Yeah. So that's it for me. And of course, I will also be playing a short clip at the end, which tells you a little bit more about that instant sign-up bonus, but that is linked below. Oh my God. And of course, if you want to follow me, my Instagram, my Twitter is also down below. That's where I post my BLÜ bonuses, you know, the KO of the night, the sub of the night, and then of course my monthly bonuses, which I did not talk about today, but those are also on there, which I just posted them for the April bonuses. So you can check that out down below. Yeah, that's it for me, everybody. I will See you next time. Thanks for watching.